With no further ado, I'd like to introduce John Curran from ARIN.
Good morning. I'm here to do a somewhat interactive session. We're in the middle of a process to do a refresh of our internet routing registry, and so I want to talk about that with this community. Actually, a good turnout. The morning sessions at NANOG, the first one, can be a little rough, but it's worse tomorrow because that's after the big social. So today's pretty good. We have a good turnout. Let me start right in. Next slide. I don't have a remote up here. Thank you. So how many people are familiar with ARIN's current internet routing registry? Oh, yeah. Look at all these big fans out there. Okay. So right after RIPE did their first IRR, we leveraged that effort and we built an internet routing registry. We kind of bolted it on to our existing framework. And the problem with this is that it was an early code base. It was bolted on and not integrated per se with our database or registry. RIPE's moved on wisely from that code base. So we're now using someone else's code base that we're the only customer of, making it very exciting in oh so many ways I can't describe. It's also, the way it was developed, had a different approach to errors and front-end interface. So as people know, it works or it doesn't. If it doesn't, you're kind of on your own. The messages could be much better. Yeah, so a lot of fun, just a big ball of fun, our current IRR. Now, we haven't invested in it over the years because we've had members say, oh, there's others out there, there's other people doing this, don't use our resources. We've had a whole bunch of discussion. It's also true that we wanted to see how people actually use the registry in production, give it a little time to mature. So it's kind of been stale, and about 2.5 years ago, I was asked by the board to look at this and see if this is the current state. Should we shut it down? Should we phase it out? Should we refresh it? What should we do? Next slide. So we've had a bunch of requests. We've had a number of suggestions that come in through our suggestion process. We've had a number of folks at the microphones at our meetings come up and say, do something about the IRR. And in April 2015, we actually did a community consultation process. We wrote up the results, and we heard a lot of feedback, okay? The biggest feedback was improve the validity of the data, that the data out there was of questionable validity and was very hard to maintain. We also heard work with the other RIRs on authentication schemes. We don't all need to roll our own. It should be some commonality here. We also heard about proxy registration services, that a lot of times the problem is that the ISP's done their job and now someone else has the block, has a subdelegation, and they need to maintain the routing. And we need to think about that, how to accommodate that. And then let's have some good integration with the registry database. It shouldn't be that I update the registry and the routing registry just lingers out there. So that's what we heard. We spent a lot of time thinking about that. We actually did a roadmap document, which we've released. Next slide. So if you go online, I'll talk to you about the consultation, but you can find something called ARIN's IRR Roadmap. And it's what we intend to do. Based on the community feedback, we said, okay, we're going to do something here. We're going to develop integrated internet routing registry capabilities within ARIN Online. So this will be inherently part of the registry database. It will not be a bolt-on. It will be tightly coupled with the registry database, i.e., if there's no address block in the ARIN registry, there won't be any RIR data in the ARIN registry. We're going to do a simplified version of our RPSL. Now, RPSL is a lot of fun, a lot of functionality. Oh, thank you. Sorry. I get to control my own slides. I feel empowered. Oh, this is great. Okay, so let's see. RPSL is a big ball of fun, but we're not sure everyone needs everything in it. The more code we put in it, the more support we have in terms of development and ongoing support. Its full RPSL isn't really used from what we can tell. We went out and looked at a number of IRR databases, and it's just not very common. We'd like to work with the community. Well, what do you need? What's the, we need Latinum and we need a certain minimal level of objects, but beyond that, what level of routing's policy specification do you really need? We are going to collaborate on cross-RIR authentication. We're going to migrate the existing RIR data into the new system. Now, this is an interesting statement. We had a lot of people say you need to move the existing data because I can't have a disruption. And ARIN's IRR data is actually replicated in other IRRs out there. So we're going to do this, but we also need to eventually get back to the goal of accurate data. And if we know the data is stale and we're moving it, then we're moving stale data, and eventually we have to figure out how to get that data to be accurate. So we need feedback. Do you want us to move the data? The consensus has been from the community feedback, yes, but let's be clear. And cooperate with other RIRs on standards and best practices. If we can come up with a common simplified RPSL, we'd like to do that. If we can come up with common ways of handling objects, foreign objects in the routing registry, we'd like to do that. We'd like to have some, we all have enough practice with routing registries now. We should be able to come to some commonality here. Yeah, so that's actually, there's a document that lays all this out online. We actually just recently, a month and a half ago, published that document and opened up a community consultation. For people who don't know it, we have a community consultation process. It has its own discussion list, the ARIN Consult list. It's open to anyone. In some of these topics enjoy 5 comments. Some of them enjoy 100 comments a day for 2 weeks. It depends on the topic. They all take place on the same mailing list. That process is open right now, so you can sign up for the mailing list and participate. And we're going to run it through the ARIN meeting that takes place in April, so we'll have time there to talk about this as well. We'll then take all the comments, finalize the roadmap, and publish it as what we intend to do. However, since we're here at NANOG and they've nicely provided microphones, now is also a time for people to come up and say what they do or don't want ARIN to do with respect to the Internet Routing Registry refresh. So at this time, I'll actually open it up. The microphones are open. Come forth, find a microphone, and say what you want. Oh, look. He beat you, Rudiger. Go ahead. Name, affiliation, and feedback on the IRR.
I am Job Snyders from NTT Communications. First of all, I would like to applaud ARIN for this effort to try and improve the data available to us to make routing decisions. It has been a thorn in my side that for years people have been able to insert data into the ecosystem and that way sneak past filters and do nefarious things like spamming or hijacks. And ARIN is not the only database that struggles with this. RADB has similar issues, NTT has similar issues, the RIPE database has similar issues. So an IRR which I would like to suggest as a leading example at this point in time is APng. The APng model is that only the owner of a prefix can make any attestation about what should happen with the prefix. And this is as things should be. The owner of a prefix should have free agency to inform the public what their routing intentions are. And they do not allow any resources in the APng database that are not managed by APng. And this, to me, is a crucial point. What we see today in the ARIN IRR is resources are documented that simply are not managed by ARIN. So if a stop is put to that, that would really close a big loophole in the routing ecosystem.
Got it.
Then, of course, you mentioned yourself, there is the issue of legacy data. Because over the years, we've, as a community, have accumulated tons of route objects, and it's really hard to figure out what the role of those route objects are. So if we get to a point where at least new objects, the new alien objects are no longer possible, that closes the immediate loophole. And then we indeed need to research how can we clean up the historical objects. Or is no cleanup needed? I don't know yet. But.
Okay.
Helpful. Thank you. Yes, Rudiger.
Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. It happens once in a while that I disagree heavily with Job, and this is another case. The RPSL was designed about 20 years ago, and some of the basic design decisions were essentially flawed and the cause of what we are seeing today and what Job was describing as problems. It does not look like an ARIN development effort will be able to produce anything but some band-aid to address those basic flaws. And I think the current state of the art of dealing with security is really not achievable in IRR, in RPSL. In the meantime, the RPKI thing and the BGPsec development has actually produced something that is much more reliable and much tougher, but indeed it is kind of early delivery and there are gaps, and in general my suggestion always is to put the effort on addressing the gaps and the flaws that are around there, to address that on that new technology rather than try to fix an ecosystem that is based on outdated, flawed design, and where kind of replacement of the whole ecosystem quite obviously cannot be done by a band-aid by a single actor or even half a dozen actors.
Okay, thank you. Next comment?
Hi, Brett Watson with Fastly. The thing that worries me is moving all of this old, stale, crusty data to a new system, right? But what's, and I understand, we can't have outages and we're basing some of our decisions on that data, but from Aaron's perspective, what would a cleanup and validation process look like? Because I can't imagine this would be useful to migrate all that crap.
So, you're asking me, I'm going to be very careful here. First, we haven't had a lot of community comment on it, first comment. Second comment, I've run 2 nationwide ISPs, but I haven't touched Enable in 16 years, okay? So be careful when you ask my opinion of something technical. Okay, based on the comments, if we do a very clean IRR and we only allow routing objects for things that are directly under control of the owner, then we'll have a lot of information that can't be imported. The right answer, obviously, is to end of life the prior information, tell people they have a certain amount of time, and then shut it down, okay? Now,
We're not good at that.
we're not good at that, but I'm quite capable of shutting things down. Take my word. I've done this many a time. So if that's what you want, that's what we'll do. If people say to import data, then by definition, we have to temporarily flex the model to allow stale data to be imported. I don't want to tell you what the right answer is. I want you to tell me what the right answer is.
Fair enough.
Okay? Microphones remain open. Yes, over here.
Job Snyders, NTT Communications.
Yes, Job.
I would like to respond to Rudiger. I think you are correct in your assessment that RPKI offers higher quality data. And the semantics of RPKI, as I understand them, is that the moment an RPKI ROA exists, it trumps any IRR data. That's at least how I would implement it. What worries me a little bit about RPKI is 2 aspects. It doesn't offer full feature parity with IRR, and there are components that at least NTT Communications heavily relies on, like AS sets. and there is somewhat lack of operational experience. So I think the future is not IRR, but there is no harm in improving existing IRR databases and closing loopholes. And of course, there's a cost trade-off. Is it worth our money? Well, between having decent RPKI deployment and ARIN being able to execute, I'm betting on this project as an intermediate step.
Thank you, Job. Microphones remain open. More comments? None of you care about what we do. It's all going to be good one way or the other. I got a guy named Mark who works for me, and I can just tell Mark and Andy, go do something. But really, you must have some opinions here. Yes?
Carl Brumman, Oracle +9.
Yep.
Regarding the one comment about only having a IRR that contains its own registry's information as
Right.
a operator, that's really a pain in the ass for me. I don't have to go to both ARIN and Wright and APNIC and maintain stuff in 3 separate IRRs. And then there's all the other ones of, I now have proxy objects in my ISP's IRRs as well. Wait a minute, how'd those get there? I don't even want those there. Let me do my own, thank you very much. So I actually prefer to, as an operator, make it easy for me because I'm your customer.
Right. So you actually just answered Rudiger's statement, which is that 4-letter word, RPKI, if you actually use that to produce routing information in ROAs, it will preempt everything, and it will give you what you're looking for.
Will you allow to actually publish in some IRR evaluation of the RPKI data so that those who are still sitting on their old tool chain, that if they even have one, obviously is RPSL based, so that they can easily import that good data, and such a move, of course, would help people like Carl to move on to do their certificates and their ROAs everywhere with the confidence that, well, okay, that data put there actually is available to the existing ecosystem.
Right. That doesn't...
Yeah, the tool for presenting that data, I'm most willing to share.
Right.
I have it for years.
Right. So the issue there is simply whether or not that meets RPKI best practices, because the evaluation's being done by a different party. And so there's a question there. And I guess if someone wants to offer that service, come talk to me. Operationally, the liability for that's a little interesting. So if you want to run the service, Rudiger, come talk to me. I'm happy to talk to you. You might need to sign a piece of paper, though.
Yeah, and I very much doubt that our legal department will agree to signing that paper.
You're probably not the one to run the service then. Yes, next microphone.
Larry Blanc Merritt. So we have quite a bit of
Yes.
experience running IRs. So I have several questions. You mentioned in enhancing the ARIN IR, you were going to enhance tools for registration, like using existing routing data to help you, register routes. So how come that isn't done with RPKI? I mean, is this being motivated by the fact that there hasn't been a lot of adoption of RPKI and ARIN, and have you considered enhancing the RPKI tools?
We actually have all the tools we need for someone to do RPKI, both as a relying party and as someone who wants to actually either use our hosted service or someone who wants to run their own CA. Okay, so well, we have the tools we need.
I've registered ROAs for our prefixes, but the process is a little cumbersome, and it won't tell you, what's being announced, so you actually have to do some work there.
We are enhancing our RPKI tools, but this is completely independent of that. The reality is that the IRR we haven't updated in some time. We have a certain responsibility to the community to either keep it operationally sound, okay, by refreshing it or shutting it down, one or the other, because it's becoming harder and harder to maintain the objects. So it's irresponsible to have a system out there that gets older and older and has data that can't be updated, we need to have some fate for it.
Right.
When we consulted with the community, they said refresh it. So the question is, what functionality do you want in that refresh?
I'm just saying you
idea.
could potentially do both. You could enhance RPKI as
Oh,
well.
we are enhancing RPKI. This is not an either-or situation at all. It is, we're putting a modicum of effort, though, into an IRR refresh because the community asked for it.
And then there's also the Origin AS information in the address registry. Is that, so we've determined that RPKI trumps IRR data. Where does Origin AS fit in? Will that still be maintained?
Yes, Origin AS was something our members put in by policy. It remains there. We're actually in the process of trying to make it a little more accessible. Job actually did a good job as an interim measure, but we're actually making it so that you can actually download that data directly.
Yeah. Well, there's also some question of semantics, like are you allowed to announce any more specific based on the Origin AS? Or,
That's up. Right now in the ARIN policy, it simply says the field defined. The semantics of it, the community hasn't supplied us one way or the other.
Okay.
Okay? Yes?
Job Snijders, NTT. I would like to respond to, I think, Carl's statement that it's convenient as a global organization to have a, let's call it a vendor, a single vendor for all route objects. And I sympathize with the desired outcome. What is not acceptable to me is how that desire was implemented over the years, because the implementation was that anyone can create anything in a lot of the IRRs. And yes, this does offer global organizations a single database to publish things, but it entirely breaks the chain of trust that derives from the RAR knowing who the actual owner is, and then facilitating the owner to make statements. So I don't know how we get a compromise between convenience of a single vendor and trustworthy data. I think if RARs would discuss amongst themselves how can we extend chains of trust from one RAR to another, that would be very interesting. And with security, we always see that the more you raise the bar, the more you lose your audience. You know, with password policies that require ridiculous things instead of just a nice sentence, it discourages people to do the right thing. If the UIs, if the processes are simple for users and it is convenient to only interact with ARIN, but have ARIN manage something on your behalf in the right database, that'd be a great outcome because it would encourage people to publish data. Right. So anything ARIN can do to make life easier for their end users is much appreciated. And I think the sentiment should be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Excellent. Any other feedback on what we put in our refresh? Yes, over here.
Jared Mach from Akamai.
No.
So one of the things that I've struggled with some of the IRR stuff is that as we've moved on, I can go and create and destroy VMs.
Right.
I can create and destroy routers with an API. But I can't interact with the routing ecosystem or the routing registries in that manner.
Right.
Is this something that you're planning on doing as part of this refresh, is to allow us to manage the objects that we have through an API?
We're going to do this through our registry system, our existing registry system, which is ARIN Online. We do RESTful interfaces for everything we do in ARIN Online. There will be RESTful interfaces. You will be able to do API programming.
Okay, that'll be very helpful for us.
Yep. Yes. Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Locke with QTS. So, did I hear you say that you were or were not going to import data from the old registry?
So you see this link down here for the community consultation where you're going to send a message telling me which answer is right? That's the answer I'm going to give you, Kevin. Okay?
Okay. So I think that in every registry, not just ARIN, every registry has an enormous amount of outdated, obsolete data. People move on, companies move on, close down, and there's just a lot of cruft in there. Sometimes a single route, even some of my own address space, I'll see 3 or 4 different things are proxy registered from other ISPs. It's just a mess. So it seems like if you're gonna have a flag day where we're setting up this great new product, excuse me, why not give it a new name? Say this is the ARIN 2 or the IRR 2. Intentionally not import any old data, so that people have the option of deprecating all the old stuff. And if it really matters to you, you'll put it in the new registry, and we won't be carrying forward all that.
That's a great idea to discuss. Please send that to the consultation list. We have to talk about that. I mean, quite frankly, it's not going to affect my routing guys, so I have no skin in the game. All right, we got 1 minute. Oh, actually, we got 5 seconds left. Go ahead, David. You coming up quick? No? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Thank you, NANOG.